you've dedicated over 25 years to making a better world through your philanthropic efforts.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious, looking back, what experiences in your early life, potentially childhood or early college years, ignited that passion for you, for helping others? What set you on this path of nonprofit leadership in
Mhm.
particular?
That's such a good question. I remember being a little kid and I made a little office in my closet and it had like an inbox and an outbox. I don't know how I knew what an inbox and an outbox were, but I had like a little calendar, a little thing. Like I always knew that I was going to be in business. And I knew that I was going to be I didn't know like the nonprofit sector or philanthropy. I'm talking about when I was like 7 years old. I knew that I was going to help people do big things to make the world a better place. That's all I knew. And I knew that I was going to be in a leadership role in that context. But then, like, I stopped seeing myself as a leader for like decades. And when I was in high school, I had this gym teacher, Mrs. Miller, and she said to me, I was messing around. I was trying to be a cool kid. I was off on the side. I said I didn't bring my uniform because that was back when you had to wear gym uniforms. Didn't have my uniform. I wouldn't be able to participate. And she kind of like took me by the scruff of the neck and she said, "Listen, first of all, I know your mom. And I'm going to tell her if you don't start participating." And she goes, "Whether you like it or not, you're a leader. Other students are watching you, what you do, and what you do impacts what they do. And that's a problem for me. So you need to get out there. You need to be leading." And I just hadn't seen myself in that role. People have assigned that role to me because I'm a firstborn. I'm tall. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. I'm an Aquarius. Like I seem extroverted. I have the attributes of leadership from the outside, and I have the trappings of, of success and of being like a quote unquote intimidating person. And so people assign that to me. It didn't mean that I ever really felt it. But in the past several years, certainly after turning about 40, I started to realize that whether I like it or not, that is what I was put here to do, to lead people to make the world a better place. And that's what I'm doing now.
I'm sincerely glad that you've had that realization and are manifesting it. What you're doing with Empowered Fundraiser, She Leads AI, I believe is important work and more important than ever.
Yeah.
It's funny that you share that about your teacher. Maybe we all have high school teachers that, have grabbed us by the scruff of the neck. And mine was Coach Sappington. And, ninth grade came to me and said, it's time to decide who you want to be. Right.
Oh,
And that call to action still echoes. And so I'm glad
mhm.
Miss Miller
Yep.
also had the wherewithal to do
Yep.
that. Keith, do you have a high school leader that did something similar for you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So it's my computer science teacher, Miss Ryan. Had a computer science class. I was always like annoyingly smart, but I wouldn't study like ever.
Yeah.
And I just like failed this computer science test. Like it was like the third test. And I was like clearly having a good time because I was like, I enjoy programming. It's what I do now. And I think she recognized that. And I just failed the test. And I was like, oh, I'm going to drop the class. And she just like made me come into the school at like 7 a.m. and just had this like stern sit down with me. It was like, you have to actually try to like learn this stuff and you could do it. And I was like, deep down, I was like, I can't do it. I'm just going to move on to the next thing. And she stopped me and she was like, this is something you might be good at. That's literally still why I do this today. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. What about maybe like early college or anything else? And
Yeah.
like a little farther along, I'm just curious how did this shape up, through that experience, maybe like adolescence as well?
Yeah. It's interesting because I got into fundraising because I needed an internship and there was an internship there in my building at school. And so and it said resource development on the on the door, and I was like, resource development, I don't know what kind of resources that they're developing, but I heard that there's an internship here and I didn't have money to travel to go to some fancy internship. And so what that enabled me to do was I found my first mentor in my vertical, in my industry, which was an amazing and transformative experience, like so many times it can be. And I'm so grateful. And I consider that one of like the ultimate privileges of my whole entire life, that I happened to be in a situation where I would randomly walk through a doorway, where I would randomly find the mentor who helped me fall in love with what I've spent my whole life work doing, which is how do we determine the connection between people's values and their money and the ability to make an impact in the world. So what she taught me was, how do we, looking at high net worth individuals and families, learn about what motivates them and inspire them to support the mission of an organization that we work for, which in my case has been higher ed. And so it's those women who have come into my life and kind of, just like taken me by the shoulders in some way and changed the course of my life forever. And so I think, a preview of what we'll talk about later is my realization that I'm that person for a lot of women now. So,
Absolutely.
and I don't know, I can't exactly explain why this is true, but one thing about spending my life as a fundraiser that jumps off the page now that I work with lots of people who aren't fundraisers is that my relationship with money is such that I never felt weird or awkward about talking with other people about their money, even though I was raised that it was a taboo to talk about money and talk about what people do for a living, talk about who has it and who doesn't. I always knew that money was for love. The only thing that we need money for is to take care of the people and communities we love. That to me untabooified it. It's like, how you got it. Part of that is like, it's interesting to me, but I'm not here to debate with you whether your monetary gains are ill-begotten or not. I'm here to help you make an impact in the future. So somehow all that stuff came together to be, I am very, very comfortable talking with people about their money and asking them for it. And that's been a huge gift.
Absolutely. That's wonderful and so important, especially in, our world of agency and sales work.
Yeah.
You have to get to that topic faster than many people feel comfortable to. But once you get over that hump, it really opens you up to the whole other world, and an important one that allows you to provide, sustain business, support your community, whether it's in your business or your family enterprise. It's
Yep.
absolutely key.
Takes money to change the world. That's it. Period.
Absolutely. Yeah, end of period. Absolutely. We could end the podcast there, right? So in your career, you've mentioned breaking into the boys club and especially in the fundraising and tech world. And so can you share more about that journey? If you feel comfortable, can you share any challenges that you did face or currently face as a woman rising in a traditionally male dominated arena? And how has that shaped you?
My goodness. It's like such a big, meaty question. I love it. Let's see. So coming up in higher ed administration as a leader in STEM fields came with a massive realization that I had grown up in a bubble with very progressive parents who taught me, like, I did not know about gender inequity. That's how my life was. I just like did all the things I wanted to do. I never knew that, I never knew about any of this stuff. And then I get into leadership roles in higher ed and I start encountering these gender dynamics that were totally new to me and I did not like it. And there were so many examples of like meetings where I would just like hold my breath almost the whole time because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. I didn't want to sound stupid. I didn't want to speak out of school. Then I moved on to, okay, I have something to add here, right? I have a valuable perspective. I have something that is unique that nobody else is going to say. And then I started dealing with the like, okay, so dude's going to just overtalk me. Okay. He's going to say that was his idea. Cool, cool, cool. Like those kind of experiences. And then over time, I adjusted. I understood what it was going to take to be a leader in an industry where everyone around me was male, almost, for the most part, in STEM fields, in higher ed, like engineering. At one point, there were 50% of us were on the leadership team in the College of Engineering. 50% of us were women, but still very patriarchal infrastructure. So it's hard to get away from it. And one of the ways that I initially kind of worked with the boys club was to be part of the boys club. And that was actually pretty comfortable for me. I felt like, and by boys club, what I mean where I live right now, like for the past 20, the boys club consists of pretty conservative, like conservative politically, conservative economically, people who do a lot of things in their leisure time that I don't do. Like I'm not a hunter, I am an outdoors woman, but I don't bond with other people around hunting. And there's a lot of that. I'm not a big sports fan, so I'm like, that's not my jam either. But I could hang around with the guys. I can say swear words with the guys. I can, like be inappropriate and untoward, and it's totally fine. And we would all be friends. And that was excellent. It worked out great as soon as I could get to that like friend level with them and be non-threatening. And I really liked that. However, along with that comes a certain level of selling out of my own integrity, because I wasn't respected for my excellent work. I wasn't thought of as a trusted colleague. I was thought of as more of like a friend, a confidant. And I knew that I was getting what I wanted by being, by like catering a little bit to my peers' emotional like needs for affirmation and like non-threateningness. And I was making myself small. In summary, I made myself small so that they were comfortable around me. And as soon as I realized like, no, that's not going to work for the long haul, Anne, then it was dicey. When I started to spread my wings and really, really own my power is when I realized how difficult and challenging it is for men, some men, in my experience, to work around strong, capable, intelligent women who hold the reins. And so that's a little bit of the journey there. It's like a really big formative aspect of my life.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's important for listeners and folks to engage with the experience that women have in male-dominated spaces.
Yeah.
And, as we proceed into what I believe is a future where AI is a great equalizer, we're going to see more and more requisite diversity on teams. And I think we're embarking on an exciting future in that regard. And I think, Keith, yeah, you have thoughts
I
on
could
this.
ask a bunch of follow-up questions. That was a wonderful, wonderful little speech. I was just going to ask, like, with like the patriarchal like power structures that are entrenched, right? I think that this seems like where you're probably thinking, like, how does AI like either entrench those and make them 10,000 times worse,
Yeah.
right? Because now you have a situation where this, like, I would argue that a lot of it is top down, the patriarchal stuff. Like, there's a lot of different things you could argue that cause it, but like, it comes from the top down, and now you're going to live in a world where the CEO can say, "What did Tom do today?" Just pointing at a guy, and it could literally go and figure it out and tell him exactly what that guy did.
Right.
And that's like a whole different world than we used to live in. The CEO never do that before. I feel like if that's used as like a power over type way, we're just basically building the greatest surveillance system to entrench that power. And so, like, my question then is just like, do you think a lot about that, and like, how do you think we fight that?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, are we just going to do the same messed up stuff, but faster?
Yeah, that's my big,
Like,
absolutely.
that's the fear, right? So here's my point of view, and like why I'm doing this is because I think that AI gives us an opportunity to break the stuff that's already broken that we have for some reason gotten used to. So, a data privacy and security example. just because it's basic, would be, I'm working with a client on their AI policies for data security and privacy, and they say to me, hey, does that mean that I shouldn't be emailing donor data to my colleague?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that means that you shouldn't be doing that. Bless your heart. Here's the fact of the matter. Nobody gave you training. Nobody told you where the policy was. The person who made the policy has turned over 12 times since then. Nobody knows this stuff. So yeah, you're emailing people's confidential information because you actually don't know better. We think because we're on the inside that people would know better. They don't know. All they know is I got to get this little pellet of information over to that person, and the fastest way is email. So I'm gonna put it in an email, not even on a link. Oh, an attachment, put in an attachment and send it to somebody. But now we get to go, okay, so that what we were doing before was not the right way to do it. Let's do it this way. Now that we have AI, we're going to redo the policies. We're going to train everybody. It's going to be continuous improvement. We're going to be checking in, blah, blah, blah. We're going to have safeguards, et cetera. So now we get to rethink that stuff. And as we think about like power imbalances, we also get to rethink those. How do we make decisions? Who's in the room? Like for AI, and like when I think about business adoption, one of the most beautiful things about it is that business operations are going to be relatively easy to integrate AI into. Like, unlike pedagogy and academia, like that is a whole cultural world that has to shift. But if you take a business unit inside an academic institution, no big deal. Like, this should not be hard, people. We can write some policies, we can put some AI in, we can give people some training, and it'll be fine. But we get to be the guinea pigs. And what can happen there is the decision makers are not the CEO, are not the C-suite. Like, they're ultimately going to make a judgment call, but we know if they have us in the room advising them, we can say to them, you actually do not use AI in the way that the boots on the ground people do. You are uniquely underqualified to comment on how you should invest in AI integration. You need the intern in the room. So now we're starting to build AI councils and stuff with the intern and the vendor and the board chair and the CEO and the middle manager, because it's going to be the champions. So now we're breaking down some of these hierarchies, and hopefully that will lead to an upending of the power structure, because just human nature being what it is, you guys, we all know the useful people are the ones who know how to use AI now. And people gravitate toward the useful people in the organization, right? Like when you bring somebody on board, you don't point the new employee to the people who aren't helpful. You point them to the helpful people. The helpful people are going to be the people who are using AI. And those people are going to potentially be the ones who've been out of proximity to power. They're willing to do this stuff because they have more to gain by using AI than the people who are already in the C-suite.
Absolutely. Yeah, and something that really comes to mind, particularly related to our work in AI and K-12 education specifically, some of the most compelling things that I'm seeing happening across the country is really these student-led AI symposiums. Every presenter, every panel is made up of students first. These are happening from Colorado to Texas to Mississippi, where students are helping, organizations champion the way that they want to see AI manifest in the classroom or in their lives as well. And I think that that's particularly powerful. Rather than top-down pedagogical influence, we're all actually in the same boat. The students have just as much experience in LLMs as the adults in this
Isn't that
case, which
so
is
cool?
fascinating. Absolutely. So I want to come back a little bit to the topic of philanthropy, because it is something that I'm particularly passionate about. And I've been volunteering with nonprofits almost my entire adult life.
Awesome.
And if philanthropy at its core is about connecting people and purpose, I want to ask you, over decades of fundraising for causes such as STEM to social justice and more, what have you learned about why people give? And how has your understanding of human generosity or their motivations evolved over that time?
So, such a good question, Eli. Oh my gosh.
I read up
Wow.
on Yan.
You know, you know the hot wings guy? You know that
Oh,
guy?
yes. Yeah.
You're like Sean. Or like Lex Friedman. Well, I mean, depending, I don't want to, but
I
in
think
terms
he's giving off more Hot Wings vibe than
more hot wings vibe than Lex Friedman vibe.
Well, make sure to send hot wings next time, right?
Oh my God, that guy, God, I love him. I love him.
It's awesome.
He's so good. So, okay, here's what a couple of things that motivate people to give. Big, high level is meaning and purpose. We all want to have a meaningful existence on the planet, right? That's important to us. We are driven toward that. But in that, there's a lot of nuance. One of the things that works in our favor in philanthropy is that while our donors are driving toward meaning and purpose, they're also getting hits of all the like love hormones. They get oxytocin, they get dopamine, right? So when you give, people who are philanthropic live longer. And we always make jokes about it because, we're working with people on their estate plans. They sign the estate plan. Now they live forever. They really literally do live longer, in part because it gets philanthropy and volunteerism becomes part of your self-identity. Now you're identifying with altruism, right? Altruism is a feel good emotion and point of like self-identity. And so you're moving in the direction of self-actualization. Self-actualized people live longer. So meaning, purpose, love hormones, they give out of loyalty, they give out of guilt, they give out of interest in like being put in a particular peer set. They give for legacy purposes. So some people really want their value system to be like to live on. And people respond to crises. Like this is why we've seen giving, you see a disaster and people like the pandemic brought so many first-time donors out. Both of the Trump administrations brought first-time donors out because everything seems like a crisis, right? Everything is life and death. And so that will urge people who historically haven't even been philanthropic to give. I think what's most interesting / surprising to people is that, in the US, we have tax laws that make it advantageous to be philanthropic, but that's the last thing on the list of motivations. Just doesn't matter. People do it because they need to, but that's not why they give. And lots of us give when it doesn't even matter. Doesn't affect our bottom line. We do it. I mean, that's actually each dollar we give costs $1. For a lot of people, that's the case. Each dollar costs $1. For some people, each dollar costs 10 cents. So it's different. But those are some of the motivations. And I think if I thought about over time, I would say that over time, what has changed for me is I've spent most of my life working with boomer males, and in terms of working with donors. And the reason why is because demographically, I've worked in higher education, and demographics are such that the people in their prime philanthropic years who went to the universities that I worked for, especially in STEM, are male. And so I've worked with boomer males and like really intimately, very, very closely, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their values, their panic, their concerns about their adult children, which 1 in 3 boomers won't give because they are worried about one of their adult children potentially effing up their lives. And so they give much, much, much differently than women do. And the great transfer of wealth is happening in the next couple of decades, and women will own most of the wealth in America by 2040. And now we all of a sudden are going to need, everyone in my industry needs to figure out how do we work with female philanthropists, because it's very different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you bring that up, because my next question is related to a recent LinkedIn post on this topic that you shared. And, you stated that you're focused on, with SheLeadsAI, empowering women to empower women to empower women. And
Yes.
I want to hear more about She Leads AI and the community that you've built
Yeah.
and the ways that you're championing women's leadership in technology, given the demographic cliff that we're approaching.
Yeah.
Can you share a story of a woman in that community or in your teams whose growth or success exemplifies this?
Yeah.
Why does this matter?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So let me first say a tiny bit about She Leads AI because it's a little bit more than meets the eye, and then it's going to make sense, the kind of transformations that I'll chat about. But She Leads AI is a brand. Underneath the brand, we have our academy, which is where all of our educational content moves through boot camps, retreats, on demand, blah, blah, blah. Academy. We have a consulting agency. So right now I'm the only lead consultant, but we are growing our own. We have a ton of baller consultants in She Leads AI who have their own thriving businesses. We're bringing them under the umbrella too. Then we have our She Leads AI Society, which is our paid community, which is just an absolutely incredible group of women. I can't even believe how amazing and brilliant they are. And then we have public policy and advocacy. So through those four different avenues, we're able to touch women's lives at different points in their AI journey. And the stories that we encounter are thing that they kind of span from, you know, hey, I found myself at this, white tablecloth event last night. Yeah, I was the only woman at the table, and the guys were like, hardy har-haring about how dumb AI is and how it's such a fad. And I decided that I would speak up. And then they school the table and they're comfortable and they're not worrying about, does anyone here at this table think that I'm unqualified to speak to AI, right? And the perils and the promise of it. So they're comfortable in their skin. So that's like a mindset thing, but it's also like the trickle down impact of a woman sitting there and schooling 12 men at a fancy event about AI and getting them to think twice about it. Like that's a big deal. All the way to, we've got, one of our She Leads AI Society members had applied for I don't know, 200 jobs or something like that, and comes into the AI. And by the way, any employer would be so lucky to have her, but she's a woman and she's older and she's in a tech field and she's got a lot working against her as a result of just those demographics. But she comes into the society, starts, meeting all these other amazing women and incubating ideas and incubating businesses. And now she's got this fantastic brand new job that has made her life, right? Like all of a sudden now her wings are spread and she's flourishing and she's making lots of money and she's doing cool stuff. And it wouldn't have happened without this. So it's like we see these societal cultural shifts happening where women are at the center of these conversations, and we see these one life changed kind of examples. In the middle there is the impact of women's leadership, that our go-to style, and these are stereotypes, but we access empathy as our main go-to leadership style. It just is naturally part of what we bring to the table. AI is so existential and face melting, right? Like everyone's self identity is going out the window, needs to be rebuilt. If we're not able to have those conversations where we're creating psychological safety in the space and people aren't actually able to share how they're really feeling and how they're really using AI, right? And what their relationship with their AI is, whatever, because we're all going to be best friends with AI if we're not already. Able to bring those thoughts and feelings into a conversation is critically important. And I think that women are more likely to be able to have those kind of
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the empathy topic connects our next question. Maybe Keith, if you'd like to ask the follow-up.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to kind of ask about practically how that plays out, what you're describing. Just in your mind, how does it play out, where how does AI improve the types of interactions that people have and allow people, how does it allow somebody to stand up versus allow them to be oppressed, if that makes sense? Right.
Okay, so a couple of different layers with that. One layer is that as people who have historically been marginalized access these tools, they're going to gain benefit faster than people who are already in positions of power. Like they're going, the people in the positions of power are going to get marginally better, right? Like a little bit better at a task or a subject matter or whatever. Whereas people who are coming into that field are going to get that big, big boost. So that's one. So now they are on level with the other people who've been, paid essentially to apprentice in their field for decades, like I have, right? I've been paid to become good, better, best at what I'm doing. Other people haven't, but they're going to learn how to do what I do for a living much faster. They're going to be, it'll be like they've been in the industry for 15 years, right? Instead, when I had to work those 15 years to figure that stuff out. So there's that. When we think about women and leadership and some of marginalized people in general, but particularly women, there's this concept of imposter syndrome, which actually is a misnomer. We're not imposters and it's not a syndrome. And the authors who wrote that first seminal paper never intended for it to become a buzzword. So I changed. Do you know this stuff? Like Adam Grant has talked about this. Okay.
Yeah, imposter syndrome to me is one of those most overused kind
So
of
overused.
terms where I feel like people could be more specific to their experiences and maybe
Yeah.
more tactical
Definitely.
sometimes.
I've always thought like the opposite of imposter, like the people that have the opposite of imposter syndrome is like out of control now with AI. I mean, I don't want
That's the
but like,
that's the Dunning-Kruger,
yeah,
right?
like myself included, the fact that I can become an expert while we're talking on something and Google it is
It's
not a good
very
thing.
scary, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Adam Grant talks about it as workplace imposter thoughts. And I can stomach that a lot better, but I do understand the walking around feeling like you're going to get found out. I do understand feeling like you're not worthy, you're not good enough, maybe even not lovable. These are very human, this is human nature here. But let's say you do have workplace imposter thoughts or imposter syndrome or whatever, you just want to check in. You now can vet your underbaked ideas working with AI and get your confidence up before you bring an idea to the fore. So, we always like to say there are no bad ideas or whatever in certain settings, like brainstorming settings, but for real, you're not going to be the one to bring the dumb idea. You would like to have some notion that there's something here that's worth value that you're bringing to the table. So I think a lot of people can do their side work with AI before they go prime time with something. And that in itself is extremely empowering. I think the ability to kind of understand and know ourselves more deeply, especially as we become connected to different AI personalities, AI avatars. I mean, I know for sure that the clients that I work with, the donors I work with, the AI adoption clients I work with, that they are coming to me as more intelligent buyers and decision makers than I've worked with in the past. But I'm one step ahead of them. They may be using AI to figure out some stuff, but I'm using AI to figure out what they're figuring out. So I come to the conversation, I've already prepared. I know what their objections are going to be. Try to come up with a new one. I already studied it. I know what your concerns are. I'm going to figure it out in advance and I'm going to figure out my talking points.
Right. One of my favorite things to do is to have it simulate an argument between me and another person for an upcoming meeting. Just because that's the worst that could happen. And I've read it. So I feel okay.
Yes, everyone who's listening, if you haven't already done that, absolutely create a persona of the person that you're going to meet with next. Say the good, bad, and the ugly about them, and then put yourself in an argument with them and figure out what they might be likely to say, so you can prepare in advance.
And one, modification of that I've tried is having the AI, based on everything it knows about me in the ChatGPT memory, act like me, and I'll assume the role of the counterpoint person. And that way, when I get that summary back, using AI so frequently, I often find that sometimes it posits questions or responses assuming my character in a way that helps inform me even more. Right. And so the role play nature of it is super helpful for building empathy with other people, Because for those moments, I'm assuming the counterpoint. And I'm trying to empathize with their perspective quite literally by playing that part, not only just to get feedback. And, to me, there's radical empathy in there, right? Of like, people often misrepresent empathy or misconstrue it with sympathy.
Yeah.
And I think finding ways to truly empathize with folks, really build understanding is much more possible with AI than ever before in faster ways. I probably talk to ChatGPT more in the car while I'm driving than I listen to music these days, as I'm just trying to verbalize and work through, ideas as much as possible.
So, okay. So on this note, I have a question for you two. We talk about this a lot in my industry. So it's entirely possible, I'm sure just based on the last 2 minutes of our conversation, that all three of us have felt empathized with by AI. Like, had a conversation, we feel heard, right?
Absolutely. It's helped me
I don't have
process
to
some.
listen to, but yes, no.
So
Yeah,
here's
absolutely.
the thing. Everybody wants to say, well, it's not human, so it can't empathize. And I'm like, fair. However, do you guys think it matters if we feel empathized with? Does it matter that we're not really being empathized with because it's not a human?
So I would say that I think it's like, I've thought about this a lot. I'm not just jumping in randomly.
Please.
This is
Yeah.
like, to me, it's like, I think that it's like when you go to therapy, right? I think there's like 50% like the homework you have to do, and it's to get you to think further along that journey, right? And I think that you can do that like with ChatGPT, and it can absolutely help you. And that people are thinking they're getting all of therapy through that, but that the other half of it is like the connection and actually having a person there. Because like there's like when you're talking to somebody, I mean, there's no way that you could open up to a computer the same way you can open up to a person. And I don't know what that is. I don't know how you can like document that. But there's also things you would say to a computer that you would never say to a person. So it's like two separate
Yeah.
parts, right? And so I think that like to disassociate that from like an actual person that you're communicating with, like that's why I think preparation is key. Like if you're using it to prepare for a meeting and then you actually have the meeting and you're using it to grow, then I feel like that's a stable, like healthy use case, as opposed to like during the meeting, tell me everything about this woman, and
Yep.
then you're just like, that's not good. That's not helping anybody.
Well, I've
Because
never done that before.
use it to like mask the emotion as opposed to growing the skill of like empathy.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to share to support this is, 10 years ago, I lost my father unexpectedly. And I had no way as a 20-year-old to process or to understand how to talk about what I experienced. And my first experience with artificial intelligence was a cognitive behavioral therapy Facebook Messenger bot, because it was the only bot or the only thing that I could talk to in a way that wasn't loaded. It didn't feel like somebody was judging me. I knew it didn't have emotions, but it applied rigorously CBT principles and practices to help me build those skills to talk about what I experienced. And since then, I know people are skeptical, and even in these, the current zeitgeist of its ability to help with things like therapy or sort of consultative support. But I firmly believe that that's one of the revolutionary use cases that will help people talk about their emotions, express themselves, connect with people better, because then I was able to embark on a journey of therapy with a professional trained, a professional, in a way that would have taken me a lot longer had I not tried to
Right.
try that
And
out.
on the other side of that with the therapist too is like if you have it like essentially listen to the therapy sessions, it can really help the therapist like by taking notes and like recording things and loading, because they have to load their context in for each patient before they go in. And my sister's a therapist, which is where I'm getting all this information from. Like I've just talked to her about it. The amount of time she spends doing notes, I was like, you need to stop. Like this isn't a skill you need to build.
Immediately.
I don't know when you're going to be
Immediately.
allowed to put a recorder in there, but eventually you will be, because it makes that much of a difference to like the stuff you'll remember and hear.
And I think one
Yeah.
underpinning point that's important too, based on your question, is it is very important not to personify artificial intelligence in my mind. Although it's a teammate and can be positioned as a helpful collaborator, I am very, very skeptical of named artificial intelligence personas that present themselves in humanity rather than as a companion to our humanity. And I think that's a very important distinction. So, in our work, we never name our AIs. They are defined by functional characteristics or qualities that they support. And that's just been not necessarily a conscious development, but it is an underlying consistent nature of every project that we've worked on in the past 2 years, is that somebody says, hey, we should name it Susie AI or Joe AI or whatever. And when we get into a discussion about that and the implications for our clients, we really actually care more about communicating what it's for and how it should be used in really clear ways.
Yeah.
So that's one caveat I think to consider is I would caution against sort of naming AI experiences or over personifying them. It's a very slippery slope, I believe.
I believe that it's a slippery slope, and I also believe that it's done deal. Like, that's what I'm worried about is we're there and we have not had time to adjust to it. Right? Like, thinking of example, well, character AI. There's a reason why it's the third most popular platform in the world, or is it the third most popular AI platform? And like the average user instance is 37 minutes, whereas ChatGPT is 7 minutes. I mean, and it's this person's name. I mean, think about all of the names of the AI voices. They're all person names.
Yep. It's very
Like,
concerning.
half of us in SheLeadsAI have named our favorite
But
AI.
I don't think it's like, okay, this is going to sound silly, but I don't think it's
Okay.
crazy because like I don't know, it's like technology always kind of follows that path. So like when like the first like TV came out, right? The first like commercials were them literally just reading the radio commercials on a card out loud because they didn't know what else to do. And what makes this crazy is that it's the same type of like that follows from like telegraphs. They were trying to write letters in telegraphs. Like at first, it was a whole thing, right? And like it follows that cycle. And with AI, it's like we're just trying to replace humans because that's all we know how to replace. Like it's capable of doing other things, but like we don't know how to talk to a computer, nor you could argue, nor do we want to. But like the
Yeah.
thing's trying to mimic us. It could be trying to mimic something else if we really wanted it to be. But it's like trying to mimic us. And so like I mean, I see why people name it because like if you developed this agent and you try to make it mimic a person, you're gonna want to name it. Like if you as the creator, I get that. But like I think that just the ChatGPT being named ChatGPT alone kind of shows it's about like they've created this new way to like essentially process knowledge, and it's like we don't really know how we're going to use it yet. Like, and making it a person is just like an easy first way to understand what the thing is capable of doing. Because it's hard to
Yeah.
understand that the computer can reason now. Like it can make a decision. That's really weird. It doesn't make any sense actually.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. You're right. You're right. Yeah. So I feel like more like that's a dissertation that we should write together about personifying AI and that there are some really, really scary things about it. But one of the things that's good about it, Eli, to consider is that, we are an extremely lonely society, right? And we're not getting less lonely, right? And it is just a fact that as our population ages to the extent that it does, people are going to get more and more lonely. And having them have a companion that they may even at times wonder, not completely understand that it's not sentient, might not be the worst thing in the world.
It might not be.
I'll
It
tell
might
you,
not
like
be.
it's become my
Sketch.
companion.
It's
It's become
sketch, but
we're talking about history, which has saved a lot of people in my life a lot of like lectures about me learning about random historical topics. I will say
Well,
that.
I do think that something that I'm excited about is I believe that impromptu in-person experiences will grow in trend and popularity. I think one of the signals I'm seeing with the drive, to in-person, real life meetups, events are growing again in popularity post-COVID as things have opened up. And I think we're going to look at a human's ability to perform a song or to sing in real will be highly valued, because now, although we've got AI song generators and authors and book
Right, it's just
writers and
like
poets,
some guy just hummed it, and it made it. It's not the same skill set as the
it's
musician.
not. As sitting in a crowd listening to a jazz band and seeing real performance is going to be a very powerful thing years from now, I believe. And so it kind of leads me to one of my last questions. I want to kind of round third, heading home here. And so when you imagine, we're 10 years in the future, how do you envision the landscape in front of you in terms of philanthropy, fundraising? How have these things changed due to AI or other innovations? Where are you hopeful?
Honestly, it totally depends on the day. Like,
Right.
I am
Right.
somewhat caught up right now in the parade of horribles. I've really been spending more of my time in worrying about the things that could go bazonkers. And so I'm a little bit scared of some of the directions that we're going in. I am worried about, our current leadership in America and the impact that that's going to have on AI adoption and safety, worldwide. So I'm a little fearful with regard to that. Second to that, I go to what it's going to be like for my grandkids. So I'm 51. In the next 10 years, I will have grandkids. Well, if my progeny choose to have children, then I will be a grandma. And so I think about what would it be like to have a 1-year-old who is who is growing up in this AI powered world where, see, I can't stop getting into the problems of it, but like where we don't know fact from fiction anymore. Like, how will my 1-year-old grandchild of 10 years from now know fact from fiction when they're 10 years old? I worry about that. And I'm absolutely, what's that?
I just said I agree. I walked in on my 3-year-old daughter just talking to an unplugged Alexa the other day, just telling her about her
Right?
day. She was
See,
like, "Hi, Alexa." She was just talking to it. It was off. I was like, "What are you doing
see,
here?"
do you see what I'm like? Do
She
you
thinks that's something you can do. That's crazy to me. Like I
Yes.
couldn't use the computers as a kid. No way.
Right? Right? So that's where we are. We've got our kids talking to inanimate objects because, I mean, they're not even plugged in because that's what seems normal now. So, and by the way, no harm, no foul. Like, it's actually pretty cute in that case. But yeah, I think about those things. I do think about how it's going to be that, like last night, I went to a live music performance, to your point, like live in person interactions, our ability to show our humanity, our frailty, our Imposter thoughts, being real, being able to show up, being fallible will be the gold standard. It'll be the thing that we're all yearning for, is where's the next messy human that I get to interact with in person. So I think that's what I look forward to, is lots and lots of authenticity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My final question for you. In your career, you've helped raise large sums of money for amazing causes. You've mentored many, many professionals. And so when you think about the impact that you've had and the legacy that you want to leave, what matters most? What do you hope that the next generation of these philanthropic leaders will take from your example with She Leads AI, an empowered fundraiser, and all of your historical work? What do you hope that this next generation carries forward?
So the main thing that I hope the next generation brings forward is not accept the mainstream as like their truth, like their North Star. I see my kids who are I've got a 28-year-old, a 21-year-old, and an 18-year-old. They don't have the same like interest in conforming that Gen Xers did or do. We always thought things were pretty screwed up, but we were taught well not to do too much about it. I think that the younger generation now has less tolerance for, the tomfoolery of our leadership in the world pretty much, whether it's corporate or government or regional or, a high school principal. And I hope that they rattle the cages until they get what they want. I just hope they don't let the power imbalances get them down. And I think that being part of the AI revolution is absolutely essential. Those of us who are like living on, as Ethan Malik calls it, the jagged frontier of AI, like we are getting the rafts ready for the people who are going to need it. And so my kids they're AI ready, and I want all the other kids to be AI ready too. I'm so glad that you guys are out here doing more than just your own work, because all of us have, we could all just be making money working in AI. Like that would be easy. No problem. There aren't enough hours in the day, and there's more money to be made than we can possibly imagine. But to be out here talking about it and socializing different ideas and approaches is so incredibly important. So I'm so grateful to you, Keith and Eli, that you're here doing this. Good job.
Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
I just want to honor, a very impactful woman in my career has been Susan McPherson of McPherson Strategies. And I had the pleasure of listening to Susan speak recently, and she said one of the most amazing things that you can do is just offer to help someone with sincerity, with integrity, with gratitude. And we're here to help Anne. We're here to help our listeners just to get hands-on with AI to grow.
Thank you so much, you guys. This was a blast. I'm in your corner, and I can't wait to hear more about what you're up to.
Absolutely. Likewise, anything we can do to help you, we're here to help. So thank you
Awesome.
so much, Anne, for joining. It's been a pleasure to have you.